Hi, welcome to Get Lit. My name's Pete Crooks. I'm senior editor and senior writer at Diablo Magazine. We're here at the Walnut Creek Library, and on Get Lit we meet local authors and photographers who have put great books together, talking to them about their creative process and also talking about the use of libraries, the importance of libraries in the community. Today we have Stephen Joseph and Linda Rimac-Colberg, who have created this impressive book, Mount Diablo, The Extraordinary Life and Landscape of a California Treasure. And when I say impressive, it's always impressive to get a book out and physically published. This is physically impressive.
Yes, it is.
Linda, can you tell us a little bit about just the dynamics of this publication?
The 7 pound?
Yeah.
The 7 pounds. It's a large format, 13-inch by 13-inch fine art photography book, so that when you open it up, the panoramas are
really
24 inches in some cases. 181 photographs, portraits and panoramas, exquisite portraits and panoramas from this photographer, Stephen Joseph. 181 of them. My narrative then introduces the mountain, introduces the photographer, and then shares a story about the Green family from Berkeley who had a home on Mount Diablo from 1938 to 1965.
Well, I want to learn more about the Greens. But obviously this is not just a whimsical publication. This is a real labor to put something this impressive together. Stephen, I've known you since I started at Diablo Magazine 13 years ago, and you've always been the guy that we say, if you want to get great photos of the magazine, Stephen Joseph, or of the mountain, Stephen Joseph is the guy that knows Mount Diablo from a photographic standpoint. But this is your first book.
It's my first Diablo book. 25 years of photographing, 26 years now, photographing Mount Diablo, and this is the first book.
So how did you come together to make this project happen?
It starts with Stephen and MDIA. I came in afterwards.
I was, Rich McDrew, who was the head of MDIA at the time, came into my studio to get a photograph, and I'd been working on a Diablo book earlier, and then I kind of put it aside to work on a few of the other books. And I just said to Rich, MDIA, you guys want to publish the book? And Rich said right away, sure, that's a great idea. Let me go, let me go talk to my board. And it just started right then. Rich really made it happen. He was the one that got it together and brought Linda in a year later, maybe?
About a year later. At some point, once MDIA, Mount Diablo Interpretive Association, who published the book, and Stephen hooked up to produce a book, they realized they would need an author. So connections are everything. And somebody at MDIA knew me as an author and asked me if I would hook up with MDIA and Stephen to be the author of a book. In their mind, it would be an impressive book. And it is an impressive book. You know, to be able to envision something and then 2-3 years later actually have the exact book that you wanted. When I met Stephen, April 1st, 2009, we knew right away it would be a terrific combination, author, photographer. MDIA let us alone, basically, to do the book we wanted to do, and this is exactly the book we wanted to produce.
Yeah, and this obviously deserves to be a book displayed on the coffee table, and that you can really take your time. This is not the iPad form or the Kindle publication.
Although I'd like to do an iPad version.
Oh, why not? Yeah,
I think an electronic version of the book would be pretty cool.
Could be pretty interesting,
yeah.
I guess. And technology has changed so much in the time that we've known each other.
Right.
And I remember one of the first times I met you, you were very, technologically savvy, in that you were talking about the idea of doing 3D presentations, and you did the 3D way before the 3D movie craze caught on.
Right. I did 3D slideshows in the Lesher Center with whole orchestras. We did several shows, 3D slideshows with the orchestra and the whole audience wearing 3D glasses. That was pretty cool.
And that was like in the late 90s that started.
Yeah, yeah, even earlier, I think.
So 26 years, I've known you 13 years. When did you first see, can you talk about the first day you saw Mount Diablo? Like, how far
Well,
back
the very first day I saw Diablo was actually in 1972, when a teacher, I was going to school in Oakland at California College of Arts and Crafts, and a teacher took us up there for a field trip. We actually went to Rock City, so the first place on Diablo I went to is Rock City, and there's actually not a single photo of Rock City in the book. I've never, after going there that one time, I don't think I've ever been back to Rock City.
Interesting.
It's a busy place, and
Right.
I just kind of avoid it. But I went there in the early 70s, and then didn't go back until 1984, when a very good friend of mine, Greg Pyatt, a wonderful painter that paints Mount Diablo, said, "You want to go for a hike?" And we just went up on Diablo and hiked, and I started photographing, and he was painting, and I've never left. It's such an amazing place to photograph, and the different climates and different altitudes, and it's a wonderful, wonderful spot. So
Well, it means so
all
much,
these
obviously,
years.
to the community, to our publication,
Right.
our namesake, Diablo Magazine. I'm always amazed at how different the mountain looks at different times of year and from different perspectives. I was at a film festival at the Castro Theater in San Francisco yesterday, and as I was driving home, I was up on a high point, and I could see
There it
Mount
is.
Diablo right across the East Bay Hills, and
It's
it
amazing.
was spectacular. Whenever I come through the Caldecott Tunnel headed
Yeah.
east, and you come over the hill from Orinda to Lafayette, and there it
That's
is again.
one of the best views of the mountain.
One of the
People
best,
ask me
yeah.
for that view all the time.
Yeah.
They say, "Do you have the view from the highway?" But I don't really photograph development. My photographs are in closer. I don't include all the buildings and highways and stuff. So I always say, "No, I don't have that view."
that shot. Well,
Which
go
is
ahead.
one of the remarkable things about these 181 photographs in this book. You won't find trails, you won't find people, you won't find park benches, you won't find airplane contrails,
No contrails.
animals. It is as though you are in the middle of suburban sprawl, but you have this wilderness where you actually can go and you can be without the congestion of people and society.
So these photographs could have been taken 1,000 years ago, or they could have been taken just yesterday, because these views
They're
are
pretty
so
timeless.
Yeah.
I try to avoid the development. There's actually only one photo, I think, out by Clayton, where you see the quarry. A
Okay.
view
Right, you see
of
the
the
quarry.
stuff off in the background. Pretty much, I just want to shoot landscape in a natural way and leave the development for other people to photograph.
And certainly that Clayton perspective on Mount Diablo is, again, a much different, like an
It's
intense
amazing,
and rocky and steep.
It looks mostly like a mountain from the east side.
Right.
And I never even really captured that view until Save Mount Diablo purchased Chaparral Springs. And then all of a sudden I had access to a fantastic east view of the mountain and started photographing North Peak and that whole side. And it's so different. Wherever you go, it's different. And I was up at the top yesterday. Took a friend that's visiting from Seattle, and as we drove up the mountain, it just changes so drastically from the Walnut Creek side all the way to the top. That's why it's so interesting to keep photographing, because it's just different so many places.
You mentioned Save Mount Diablo and Mount Diablo Interpretive Association, as well as you as a photographer documenting these beautiful shots, and you as a writer capturing the stories and the history. Who are some of the other sort of heroes of the mountain who make this this landscape and this open space so available for us to appreciate, enjoy, and protect?
Well, Bob Doyle is probably one of the main people, as far as he started with Save Mount Diablo when he was in high school, I think, and then has gone on to now he's the general manager of East Bay Regional Parks, and he was involved in purchasing just millions and millions of dollars of land all around Alameda and Contra Costa County. I mean, we really have him to thank. And then people like Seth Adams, that's been with Save Mount Diablo for I'm not sure how many years. I think quite a few have made quite a difference to our local landscape.
And such a passionate advocate, like
Yeah.
relentlessly passionate
Relentlessly,
advocate
yeah.
of keeping that space
And
open and beautiful.
They have a team together now. Ron Brown is the head, and I mean they're doing just a great job. You look out, there's very few places where you look and you see houses on the hills leading to Mount Diablo. I mean, it's amazing. And as a panoramic photographer specializing in wide views, it's getting harder and harder these days to take these wide views without having the houses creep in.
Or a Starbucks logo.
Yeah, or a Starbucks logo or something. So we're really lucky to have organizations like Save Mount Diablo that have kept the mountain open for all of us forever. It's great. And then MDIA to keep the trails open, and they do so much work up there now these days. They staff the visitors centers, and it's and publish our book. That was wonderful that they took that on.
Sure.
So it's been great.
MDIA publishes terrific maps and wildflowers, the trees and bushes and the mammals and the birds, but they've never done something like this before.
Yeah, this
so
is a big project
terrific
for them.
leap.
Ambitious for everybody.
Very
Yeah.
ambitious.
And what a great use of the resource of your archive of photography. How, what range of time do these photographs, did they start 25 years ago?
No, 20 years.
Yeah.
The first 5 years on Diablo, actually a lot of it was stereo photography, my 3D stuff. And we really couldn't include the 3D in this book. As it was, we included black and white and color, kind of a range, and a range of cameras. I was shooting 20 years ago 100-year-old cameras without batteries, and you know, the book is a mix of every camera I've used over the last 20 years, going back to the turn of the century Kodaks up until the modern digital. And you can't really tell what's what. You look at the book, and you might be looking at a photograph taken with this early Kodak or a brand new Nikon. I mean, it's a real mix of all the different cameras I've used throughout all these years.
And when you say there's no contrails and the skylines and everything,
no contrails.
Are some of those removed from Photoshop, or
No,
do
I
you
don't-
you find a moment when
I
there's
just don't take, if I was on the mount last week and getting ready to take a shot, and a jet came through leaving this huge contrail, and I just, okay,
Thanks
I'm
a
not going
lot,
to take it. Yeah, right, thanks a lot.
These people have to get to Ontario.
Yeah. I try to get a very natural looking sky, and contrails they just bug the hell out of me. I mean, you could remove stuff in Photoshop, you could remove houses in Photoshop, you could remove anything, but I really try to, I just don't do that, you know.
Speaking of houses on the mountain, there is one very important house that plays into the history and also the support of this project, right?
Yes.
The Green Hill.
Yeah, right. The Green family, Robert and Deborah Green of Berkeley, purchased a home they purchased space and had a home built by William Worcester, who was a well-known Bay Area architect at the time. He and Robert Green were friends. There's this house, was a house, Green Hill they called it, right up, and you would have a better idea of how to get up there. It's about 300 feet south, just south of the summit.
Yeah, it's
Up Summit Road.
there's a
Pioneer.
road that leads to it.
Right.
I don't know the name. It's just a closed fire road. I
Right.
don't know the name of it.
But you can hike to that
Yeah, you can
spot.
walk through there.
You can walk
it's
up
a
to it
beautiful
now.
spot.
And there actually is a photograph of Green Hill in the book that Stephen took of what it looks like now. So they lived there from 1938 to 1965. Robert Green was a lawyer in Berkeley, and he would travel back and forth. But Deborah Green would take her kids every summer and raise the 4 kids to live with nature. They had this terrific house, and they learned to hike and ride horses and you know, get to know all the animals that were out there. The deer would share their space, the raccoons and the foxes would all share their space. Lovely home, great family. They left the home in 1965. The home is no longer there, the ruins are there. There's an old swimming pool and a tennis court and some chimneys. So the space is there. You can still go visit the site of the old Green Hill Ranch. Deborah Green was a terrific advocate of all things nature, and her children wanted to do something to keep her name and her foundation alive. And they suggested putting some money toward the book. So they gave MDIA quite a generous donation, as long as MDIA would match that, which it did, and we had the money to put together the book.
And your first run, the first 3,000 copies
First
sold out?
3,000 copies. We launched the book March 12th, 2011 at the Walnut Creek Barnes & Noble here. And we sold out within the first 6-7 months. Took a second run of 1,500 books, just in time for the holidays. And those are still selling briskly.
And the book is available?
Walnut Creek Barnes & Noble, Dublin Barnes & Noble. On Contra Costa Boulevard, it's Wild Birds Unlimited. East Bay Nature in Walnut Creek,
So there's various places to
Berkshire
pick it up.
Books
the
in
Summit
Concord.
Museum at the
The-
top of the
right.
mountain.
Oh, that's
Right.
a nice
Right
place to
there,
pick it
Mitchell
up.
Canyon.
Right.
Yeah, it's very nice. Drive to the top and
Right.
buy our book.
Right, exactly.
Now, this is your 4th book of 5 thus far.
Right.
Your first book, Nature's
Nature's
Beloved
Beloved
Son.
Son.
Can you talk a bit about that project and how that came together? Because that has another, hero
That-
of wildlife and wild spaces at the center.
Yeah, that's a very cool book. It was studying, looking at John Muir as a botanist, which no one really had ever done before. And my partner on that, Bonnie Geisel, who's a great Muir scholar, went around and found not all, but many of the plants that John Muir had picked himself in 1864 was our earliest plant up until his Alaska trips at the turn of the century. And they were spread all around the country. And Bonnie Geisel located the plants, and then I would go and scan the plants, and then I restored them on the computer, the actual plants that John Muir picked. So in the book, you can see these restored plants that 140 some years old that John Muir had picked. And plants really drove his life. I mean, they really were a big part of his life, and no one had ever really studied him before as a botanist. People knew about his national park work and his Sierra Club and geology and all this different stuff, but not as a botanist. So that was a very cool. And then there's a traveling show that's traveling around the country of the botanical work, and there was a big show at the Oka Museum that just closed, Walk on the Wild, that was all about John Muir and had the botanical prints in them. And I blow these prints up huge to 7 feet or so. So you're looking at these tiny little plants that John Muir collected, restored back to the way they would have looked to him when he dried the plants and preserved them, and they yet blown up on these big canvases. It was pretty
Fascinating
cool show.
to see the size of those prints. And also, Bonnie deserves great credit as sort of the Sherlock Holmes of that, to go through all those archives, that weren't necessarily well documented.
Not at all.
She had to really figure out which ones were Muir's clippings, and then
Right.
it's a clipping that's survived a century and a half.
Right.
And of course, technology was very helpful to that project as far as restoring it to have that kind of
Oh
lush.
yeah, the project couldn't have been done without the computer. The whole digital technology of rebuilding the plants, they're all taped down to herbarium sheets, and rebuilding the plants, and that was all huge Photoshop, about 3 years scanning and repairing the plants, and it's a very cool book. It's really
and this
neat
traveling
look at John Muir.
the traveling exhibition, which is now going across the country, so people
Right.
all over the
All
U.S.
over the
can
US.
learn about this fascinating project
Right.
and appreciate Muir on another level.
Right.
It's appropriate that exhibition started here
At the Bedford
Gallery
Gallery. That's right.
with Carrie Lederer's
Yeah.
assistance, because Muir, his home base was
This
right
is a
here,
Martinez,
just a
so
stone's
it's
throw
very
away.
appropriate. Yeah.
John Muir visited the mountain house that was up on Mount Diablo. He visited in 1877, I think is the date, if I recall that correctly. Even he was here. He took a hike up Mount Diablo, stayed a night at the mountain house. That was there. It's not there now, but there is a placard at the site of the mountain house.
That was a hotel, right?
That was a hotel. It was a 16-room hotel.
So in 1877, how would one get from their Martinez home to the mountain house?
Most likely, John Muir would be walking. He might
Walking,
have.
or
He
there,
might
there
have
was
a
a
horse.
road.
Oh, there
and
was a
horse.
road,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm thinking John Muir himself.
Probably.
He probably
Since he
a
walked
horse or a
everywhere.
walk. Probably walked.
He just walked up the
Right,
mountain. and
but there were, and there's terrific history. There's a little bit of history in here, but not too much. This never was intended to be a textbook. My copy was intended to complement his artistry, his poetic artistry of the mountain. So the narrative goes along that line.
Right.
It introduces the mountain, and it just introduces the mountain a little bit of the history to give people a sense of place, and then I step away gently and allow the reader to now take a journey on Mount Diablo through his images. I think it's a perfect way to introduce the mountain, give people an idea of what they're in for, and then get out of the way and let them enjoy the mountain page by page by page, never really knowing what's on the next page, just as you wouldn't know if you were taking a hike going around the curve or up over the hill. So there's some terrific history on Mount Diablo Interpretive Association's website. and SMD's website, a lot of great textbook information about the mountain itself. I mean, there's some wonderful history about how the roads were built. Northgate Road and Southgate Road were built, and how the summit was up there with the observatory and the telescopes up there, and Mountain Home was there. These buildings are all gone, burnt down, broke down,
Right.
on purpose or by accident, we never quite know. And what happened then at that point was most of the commercial development was stopped. And we had groups like SMD coming in and deciding that it was time to not move the commercial development any further on the mountain.
Right.
And hence we have this
The
gorgeous,
mountain's
gorgeous
still
mountain
there.
in our backyards.
And as not to pigeonhole Stephen Joseph simply into the photography category of nature photographer, I see you at Green Day concerts and gallery, all kinds of events. You did a fascinating series of photographs of 360-degree looks at how Broadway shows are put together, from rehearsal to special effects to staging.
And that show opens at the Bedford, actually, December 9th.
So we'll be looking forward to
We'll
that.
be looking at the Broadway show, the designers of Broadway, and that's lighting designers, costume designers, set designers, the shops that make all of the Broadway costumes, and it's really behind the scenes of Broadway. And it's going to, I'm planning that show right now with Carrie, and it's going to be a very cool show. There's going to be about 60 big panoramic prints right in the studios of all these designers, along with hopefully artifacts of stuff from the designers, and it should be a very cool show.
Right, I remember you telling me about being in the staging for the infamous Spider-Man
Oh, yeah,
show
Spider-Man. I
when
did a
they had
bunch
taken
of
all the
stuff.
seats of the theater
Yeah.
out, and it was all people on computers working
Right.
on special effects. So that I love behind the scenes coverage, that fly on the wall coverage, and so I'm very excited about that. We can learn more about all your work in at your website, I imagine.
Yes, StephenJosephPhoto.com.
Stephen with a PH.
With a PH. And that's got all of, in my gallery section is all the different projects, from the Broadway project to, I'm also doing a really very cool artist series throughout the Bay Area of all really the top Bay Area artists, that another 360-degree photo project in their studios.
Wonderful.
That's on the website. And then the Broadway and Muir Woods and Sonoma Land Trust, I do lots of photographing in Sonoma, so it's got a real cross-section of everything I do.
I remember a wonderful, this is really pulling something out of the random bag, but a wonderful 360-degree photo you took of the Port Costa artist who makes rockets and spacemen.
Clayton Bailey.
Clayton Bailey, yeah, what a wonderful guy that he is.
He was one of the early artist series. In fact, I just did his show at the Crocker in Sacramento.
Okay.
I documented in 360-degree views of Clayton's 50-year retrospective that just closed at the Crocker. And he's in it many times, wearing different costumes around his show. He's
What a character.
Wonderful, wonderful artist. But that photo is in that series too.
Right. Well, there's so much, always wonderful to hear what you've got going on, because you're one of the most creative people here in the East Bay, for
thanks.
sure. What's your next project, Linda? Do you have something on the burner?
Well, mom's the word, but Stephen and I are working on
We're
another
working
book.
on
We're
another
working on
book.
another book
Terrific.
Whose subject is as important to the Bay Area and to all of us as the mountain is to us here in Contra Costa County. So as we move further along into it, word will start to leak out, because we'll start doing our research and interviews.
All right.
And we'll let you know, front end, as we get closer to it. It's probably 2 years down the road.
Well, interesting little tease there. We'll leave,
Yes, yes,
leave
yes.
it there. We're here at the beautiful Walnut Creek Public Library, which has just been sort of a smashing success since
It's been great.
opening.
It's been great.
What can you share one moment in your life or experience that you've had with public libraries and the usefulness that that they offer?
I grew up in Palo Alto, and I loved, that was a terrific childhood in Palo Alto in the 50s and 60s. And I loved going to the library with my friends. We lived in an area where we could, even at an early age, we really could walk everywhere. Mom and Dad didn't have to drive us everywhere, as parents need to do with kids today. We had the Palo Alto Library on Mitchell Drive. And my girlfriends and I would go, we'd be 7 and 8 and 9 years old, and we would go to Mitchell Library and sit, and we knew where all the different, we knew that library, we knew all the different picture books were, and the animal books, and the Nancy Drew books. We'd go there to do some schoolwork, but not normally schoolwork. Schoolwork was done at school or at home. The library for us was really the fun place to go, and to go up and down the stacks and to find those books that we wanted. And at that time, of course, the librarians would always say, shh, to be quiet. And we couldn't go a whole day there without getting into the giggles somehow, showing each other something we had read or wanting to whisper about something that had happened in school. And I remember being in the library, loving the books, but the librarian would always be telling us, I'm going to have to separate you girls if you don't keep it quiet.
Right.
And I still think of that in libraries, but not in this one. In this library, you can speak out loud. You're encouraged to exchange information and ask for help and bring someone over and share something with somebody. This is more than a library. This is a, we talk about it as the community's living room.
Gathering space.
As the gathering space, as it should be. But I know that there are still little girls out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Getting into
keep
the
their
giggles.
voices down though, right?
Getting into the giggles, otherwise they'll be kicked out.
It's that interesting, there's that fine line, it's like at rock concerts, the stand up versus sit down crowd. Like I paid for this seat, I want to sit in my seat, you need to sit down, and then there's the more enthusiastic people that want to get up and dance. Stephen, how about you? What was your childhood library?
Well, it was actually in Oneonta, New York, and it was a beautiful library, Huntington Library. Same family as the Huntington Library in Southern California.
Oh.
And in fact, it started in Oneonta, I'm pretty sure. And I loved the library, especially through high school, because it was a way to get out of the house actually and hang out with your girlfriend. So it was just another community place to go. It was a safe place where you could kind of hide in the stacks and hang out and read, and that was my memory, was hanging out with my girlfriend, watching her do her homework.
Well, it's interesting to think of it more as a social place than a place of study and quiet, but it certainly offers that.
Well, later as you get older and you're in college and different times, you realize all the importance of the library, but whatever it brings you in, whatever gets you in the library, gets you in the door is important. Here they have this teen program I was told about where they play video games here, and they have a whole setup. It's just the greatest thing where they bring teenagers into the library that might never come in, and once you're here, I think you get hooked for life. You use it your whole life. Yeah, you just keep coming back.
It's a really reasonable admission price.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thanks for coming to the library
Thank
to film with us, and congratulations on this very, very impressive work, both as a singular publication, but also as a showcase of this amazing body of work that you've created, documenting. Thank you for all the photographs and the beauty that you've captured on this great mountain that's right here in our backyard.
It's been a great 26 years of photographing, and I hope to have another 26
yeah,
years
we look
of
forward to the next 2 decades of Stephen Joseph's work. Thanks so much for coming in, and thank you for watching Get Lit. Make sure to tune in for more author interviews, and also we'll see you here at the Walnut Creek Public Library. Thanks for watching.